Hi friends, so I wanted to direct your attention to Whitney Webb, who's from the MintPress News, and she did a quick live stream this morning. It was about 8 minutes long, which I'm going to show you. It was on Facebook, so I don't think Whitney Webb will mind too much. And it was just about bringing attention to the four-part series that she's done about Jeffrey Epstein, and it's a very complicated story, something that you won't probably hear, you definitely won't hear in the mainstream media, but she's done a lot of research. Whitney Webb is actually, I find her writing to be very informative. There's all sorts of angles, and there's all sorts of different aspects to the Jeffrey Epstein story. It's good to know rather than the superficial story. So, and I just wanted to say, I don't think anybody saw the this occurrence happening. Did you? I never even occurred to me that there might be something like this happen. Yes, I'm joking. And I feel sad for all the victims. I feel it's unfortunate that whoever has been involved in this sex trafficking, and I'm talking particularly about the oligarchs and political figures, it's unfortunate that they probably will not that I ever expected they would see the inside of a jail cell, because they all protect one another. But it's unfortunate that I would have hoped that Jeffrey Epstein would have, if he was in the business of blackmailing politicians with who either unknowingly went and had sex with a minor, or even if they knowingly did. If he was blackmailing people, then I would have hoped that he would have told somebody about the details, so that if ever something like this happened, if indeed he was murdered in prison, or if they gave him a belt or whatever it is to carry it out. He was supposed to be on suicide watch, I think, but then some people say he was taken off suicide watch. I don't know why anybody would take somebody who has already tried to kill themselves, if that was indeed what happened the first time to Jeffrey Epstein a few weeks ago, why they would not have some sort of a constant 24/7 watch. And one would imagine that he would have video cameras in the jail cell, seeing he's such a high-profile person with such a high-profile case. And I'm sure there was. And anyway, it's just all very unfortunate, and I feel sorry. I feel sad that someone also has spent their life, that Jeffrey Epstein has spent his life procuring minors and allowing them to be raped for money. It's a very sad thing to be procuring young people for that. So that's an unfortunate way to spend one's life. And nobody really, he's supposed to be he was supposed to be a hedge fund advisor and had a lot of dealings with wealthy people. There's going to be lots and lots of nonsense out in the media. There already is. People are already saying that he suicided when there's an ongoing investigation in process, as typically the mainstream media does. They go and report something that it's a suicide when really there's still an ongoing investigation. Not that I think that's going to actually be anything real either. I think there's both sides. Lots of politicians on either side of the aisle in the US are probably breathing a sigh of relief. There's going to be a lot of politicians who were on the Lolita Express, or who've had dealings with Jeffrey Epstein, or even royalty, who like Prince Andrew, who, if they had anything, if anything untoward happened, which according to one of the victims, Prince Andrew had engaged in four sexual things with her. But anyway, there's going to be a lot of people sighing relief that he is dead. And I'm not going to speculate about the Clintons or Trump. It's just, I think a lot of people probably would have wanted him to be silenced before he got to talk about anything. Anyway, another shitfest that we're witnessing in the mainstream media, and also that we'll probably never know what really happened, because everything is so corrupt. and so many high-powered people probably wanted him dead. And it's surprising that in this particular facility where he was kept, where Jeffrey Epstein was kept, apparently there's never ever been a suicide before. So whether he was murdered, whether somebody gave him something to hang himself with because he really, really wanted to die, because he didn't want to have to face the rest of his life in prison, and it's not very good for people who are pedophiles in prison. Who knows what happened. Anyway, we probably never will know what happened. And so anyway, but you can have a look at this thing by Whitney Webb, this little live stream, and she's done a 4-part series on it. It's very interesting. I haven't actually, I haven't really been paying that much attention because it's sort of, there's so much else that's sort of important. And I know that none of these people, if they were involved in any sort of, if Jeffrey Epstein had procured these girls for any of these, like for Bill Clinton or for Trump or for Dershowitz or for Prince Andrew, none of these people are ever going to pay for that, ever going to see the inside of a jail cell. That's just how it's set up now. None of these, all these oligarchs protect one another, even if they don't even like one another. They all protect one another because the minute somebody is put away, it sets a precedent, and the next thing you know, other people will be put away. So they don't want to see anybody, even if they don't like them, see the inside of a jail cell. And all these people lie like rugs. It's a shit show, and that's how it is now. So anyway, it's very sad all around for the victims, for people who spend their life, sex trafficking, for the whole thing is, is appalling. But anyway, so and it goes on all the time in the world, because there's all sorts of unfortunate sex trafficking going on in the world of young people. So I'll show you this. Please check out this next 10 minutes with Whitney Webb talking about her 4-part series, and then go and check it out because I think she's done a lot of research into it, and check out some of her other journalistic efforts on MintPress News. And if you haven't subscribed to MintPress News, please do, because they always have interesting stories, interesting journalistic stories. And please also, while you're at it, subscribe to the Grey Zone. The Grey Zone is a wonderful independent news service with Max Blumenthal, Ben Norton, Anya Parenpill. Subscribe to the Empire Files with Abby Martin and Mike Preisner. And that's a really wonderful independent news program. Who else is there? The Black Agenda Report. Quite a few now. It's sort of increasing. Caleb Marpin also does some interesting live streams. He's socialist, and he has quite a detailed knowledge about socialism and about lots of other issues, and he's written a book. Caleb Marpin, CalebMaupin. He does stuff on the, he's an author and journalist on the RT. That's about all that comes to mind right now, so sorry I just don't have any list in front of me. And of course the Jimmy Dore Show, that's always got some interesting guests on. So there's different ones now, and you have to sort of, look around. But anyway, I'll show you this from Whitney Webb, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notifications bell. Otherwise, you don't receive notifications when I drop a video. And please leave comments if you wish. And my name's Trish Roberts. Thanks so much for watching. Till next time. Bye for now.
Hey guys, this is Whitney Webb. I am a writer for MintPress News. If you follow MintPress News on Facebook, you probably know who I am because I write a lot of stuff for MintPress, right? So I'm sure most of you have heard the news by now. Jeffrey Epstein is said to have committed suicide. There's been a lot of conflicting reports about that, and that's part of why I'm doing this live video. And that's because, if you aren't aware, I've been doing a pretty extensive investigative series for MintPress about Jeffrey Epstein, right? And so it's 4 parts. The first 3 parts are now out. If you haven't read them yet, go to mintpressnews.com. They're all available there right now, okay? So a few things to go over with Epstein's suicide. So there's still conflicting reports, even though, it was this morning. And there's all these different, even among mainstream outlets, conflicting reports saying that he went to the hospital at 3 in the morning, that he went at 7:30, that he first was admitted because of cardiac arrest, that he first was admitted because he tried to hang himself and was found unresponsive in his cell. So there's all these different things, all these different conflicting stories about what really happened. He was apparently on suicide watch, and the Associated Press reported that like a day or two before he committed suicide, he was taken off suicide watch. No one knows who signed that order yet. It'll be interesting to see who decided to take that extra level of protection off. Let's also keep in mind, too, that Jeffrey Epstein was in one of the most secure prisons in the U.S. Apparently someone on suicide watch has never killed themselves in that prison. That's where they took El Chapo, apparently, this prison in Manhattan where Epstein died, or said to have killed himself. So I don't really want to speculate and like get into like who killed him or like, all this other stuff, because when big stories like this break and like important or well-known people like this die, suddenly there's always a lot of conflicting reports, and I don't have all the facts yet, so I'm not going to tell you one way or the other what happened. And, I just want to say that, there's a lot of hashtags, at least on Twitter, that are saying like, hey, Trump body count or Clinton body count. Let's keep in mind that Jeffrey Epstein and the network he was a part of that I've been writing about for MintPress, this is bipartisan. This is both parties. If you think only Democrats are into this stuff or only Republicans are into this stuff, I've got news for you, and you're not going to like it. This is bipartisan corruption and child abuse, and it is a mess. And please stop linking it to your favorite candidate or not favorite candidate. That's just like, so you're missing the point. Okay. The other thing I want to bring up with Jeffrey Epstein's death is that the head honcho of the department investigating what really happened and that was in charge of this prison he died in is Bill Barr, who's Attorney General, right? And so people are being like, well, at least on the Trump camp are being like, oh yeah, he's going to get to the bottom of this. I have something to say about that. Bill Barr in the late 1970s, right, straight out of college, went to work for the CIA, and what he did at the CIA was stonewall the church committee that was investigating the CIA at the time and keeping them from letting, important records come out and keeping them from fully investigating the extent of covert activities of the CIA, which were highly illegal. Obviously, if you've never looked into the committee's findings, I encourage you to do so. And remember that more didn't come out then because of Bill Barr. Right. So I just want to put that out there. And also, when Bill Barr was Attorney General the first time under George Bush Sr., he did a couple of things. One of those included pardoning Iran-Contra war criminals. And some of those, as I note in part 2 of my Epstein report, were tied to pedophile rings, sexual blackmail rings, like Jeffrey Epstein ran, and money laundering and all sorts of other horrible illegal stuff. So if you think he's going to really get to the bottom of what happened to Epstein, I'm not buying it, and I don't think you should either. I mean, this guy is a fixer for the Bush family. He's a swamp creature, whatever you want to call him. So don't expect, the FBI to rule this, really tell you what really happened, right? You shouldn't expect that. I'm just going to tell you right now. So sorry if you were hoping that Bill Barr was going to be a nice guy, because he's not. So anyway, I also want to take this opportunity to go over a little bit about some of the reporting I've been doing for MintPress. So basically what I've been trying to do is go into the history of this to show the network in which Jeffrey Epstein existed. Because a lot of mainstream reports, ever since he was arrested in early July, have tried to be like, look at what this one single billionaire was doing. He was a really bad guy, and he hoodwinked all these billionaires and other powerful people that were connected to him, and only Jeffrey Epstein was the bad guy here, right? So what I've been trying to show is like that's completely not accurate. This goes back a long time, and the summary of this, I guess, of this network, I would really call it a nexus between organized crime, the CIA and the Mossad, and I lay all this out, how this nexus really developed in the 40s, that this sort of sexual blackmail operation, this was pioneered by the mob, specifically the Mayor Lansky mob, and it was run in contention, and the mob linked up with the CIA during World War II. That partnership never stopped. It kept going. The one guy at the CIA that was responsible for the connections between CIA, organized crime, and the Mossad was James Jesus Eagleton. If you don't know who he is, look him up, because he was involved in a lot of nasty stuff, right? So these networks have been going on for a long time. During the anti-communist crusade of the early 1950s, there was a sectional blackmail operation that involved J. Edgar Hoover, it involved Louis Rosenstiel, who was a mob-connected businessman, and it involved Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn, if you don't know who he was a mob lawyer. He was super influential in Ronald Reagan's administration and other administrations before, like Nixon's as well. And he's probably best known for being the mentor not just to Roger Stone, but to current President Donald Trump. And Roy Cohn admitted to the face of the NYPD detective that was in charge of human trafficking that he was using underage boys in a sexual blackmail operation in connection with the anti-communist crusade, implying that it had government protection. And he said it to the face of this guy because he knew he was untouchable. I point out why it's this way, in my series, and it's all documented there. If you don't believe me, and this sounds crazy to you, I source everything. Please go check it out. This is all documented in books, and like even mainstream sources have reported on this over the years. But what I want to stress too is that people like Roy Cohn, for example, had connections to pretty much every major media empire and publishing company, and we're friends with all of them. So if you're wondering why this didn't come out sooner and Roy Cohn felt like he was so immune to prosecution or anything like that, and that he could just admit this to the face of the head of the human trafficking department of NYPD, I mean, it's really not that surprising. So anyway, a lot of what I get into in part 2 is the Iran-Contra network. That's going to be making a comeback in part 4, which I hope to be out. I hope will be out this week. But it's a lot of work, so I'll do my best. So anyway, there were a lot of sexual blackmail pedophile rings that came to light, mainly in the late 80s, including the Franklin scandal, the Craig Pence callboy ring, and all of that, and how all those connect to a lot of the people in the same network I discussed in part 1. And people connected to Jeffrey Epstein later on. So I encourage you to read that report as well. The most recent report I have out is the Mossad side, and I talk about the mega group, which is sort of this group of mega billionaires, but they call themselves the mega group, right? That sort of straddle, the U.S. and Israel in terms of their political influence. They're major political donors in both countries, and they also have ties to intelligence agencies in both countries. Okay, so this was pretty much documented in my report. Again, please follow the links. I would really appreciate it. If you didn't take my word for it, please, I document it all so that you can see what's going on here. And it's really important that you follow up on anything I say, right? So one of the mega groups things with the Mossad is that they were connected to Mossad agent business people. They did business with known Mossad agents. One of those is Robert Maxwell, who I talk about in part 3. There's another one too, whose name is Mark Rich, who has some connections to the Clintons. I'll be talking about that in part 4. So Maxwell was a known Mossad agent. He was involved in this Promise software scandal. I'll be getting more into that in part 4 as well. And that was basically collusion between the Reagan administration and Israeli intelligence to put a backdoor in this software that allowed the Mossad to spy on as many as 80 intelligence agencies around the world for like 10 years. Which is pretty nuts if you think about it. And so they had this dragnet surveillance thing, and this was done in collusion with the top aide of the Reagan administration, because they didn't like that the software was being used by the Department of Justice to target money laundering cases. Because if you know anything about what went on in the 80s with Iran-Contra, a big part of that and a big part of what the CIA was doing at that time was money laundering. And the director of the CIA for a lot of that was Bill Casey, who, according to Roy Cohn's longtime secretary, called Roy Cohn every single day. So just another example of all these different connections that come together here, right? And so Robert Maxwell, I think I mentioned this, maybe I forgot. He is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, who is Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, but according to Epstein's victim, she was his main procurer and his madam, right? So the fact that he was involved with the Mossad is very significant, and the fact that she is tied into Epstein raises a lot of questions, I would think. Also, something I note in my last piece is that Epstein was funding a company with Ehud Barak that was founded by members of Israeli military intelligence, and also was being funded by Peter Thiel, who's the head. He has the majority shareholdings in Palantir, and he's also one of the co-founders of Palantir, which is like this creepy pre-crime software, and it's sort of like Promise, but like the modern day version. And so they were all funding this emergency response program that goes on your phone, and basically critics say it spies on you through your phone and basically gives, Israeli military intelligence a backdoor into your phone. That's what critics say, right? So you can take that as far as you would like. So part 4 is going to be out this week. Here at MintPress, we're not going to let Jeffrey Epstein's suicide, whatever you believe about that, stop us from reporting on the case. We're going to keep running with the series until it's done. Any other things that come up, we'll be reporting on that as well. But I want to say something too. So like a lot of things that have been overlooked a lot when it comes to mainstream media coverage of Jeffrey Epstein. If you've been reading it, they just say billionaire financier and all this stuff, right? They forget to say that he was linked to intelligence, and that's coming from like Alex Acosta, right? Former labor secretary, also part of the law firm that Bill Barr was a part of and that defended Epstein, right? So if he was saying it was intelligence, leave it alone. That's interesting, right? So I just want to point out that there is a history of intelligence agencies killing their own assets and their own agents when they became a liability. So if you think, oh, if he was intelligence, that should have protected him, no way. A good example would be like Manny Noriega of Panama. He used to work with the CIA all the time and was really close to George Bush. And it was George Bush Sr. that invaded Panama and took him out and put him in prison forever. So don't expect the CIA or any other intelligence agency to be loyal to their own. If you're a liability and you threaten their operations, they will take you out. And that is a documented fact. A lot of people don't like to speculate about this stuff, and I don't really know who killed Epstein, but so far I'm not, buying the suicide narrative just because of all the discrepancies there. So we'll see what ends up happening and what more info is coming out. But also the FBI has especially when it comes to these sexual blackmail rings, right? They have a tendency to, they have a documented history, I should say, of rapidly and quickly covering this up. One example would be the Franklin scandal. If you read that book by John DeCamp on the Franklin scandal, which I highly recommend, he lays out just how quickly and aggressively the FBI covered that up. So I want to, as I said about Bill Barr earlier, Bill Barr's involvement and connections to this network, and also the fact that his dad hired Epstein at some point when he was a college dropout. And Bill Barr's dad also worked for U.S. intelligence. There's a lot to be skeptical of here. So as the story develops, please try and be skeptical of the official narrative as always. And we'll see, what's going on when the story as it develops in the next few days. Keep following MintPress News for the latest on this case. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm not very active on Facebook anymore. They don't let me share MintPress News links on my page. I don't really know why that is, but I read a lot of not nice things about Facebook, right? So I also want to point out that it's kind of interesting, talking about the FBI, that just I think it was a few weeks ago, they said that all conspiracy theorists are like a domestic terror threat. So I think that's kind of interesting now that the FBI is going to be doing this investigation, and that whoever questions the results of their investigation, like for example, they find it was a total suicide and there was no foul play or anything like that, people that don't believe that story are going to be labeled conspiracy theorists. So important to keep that in mind. I've also written about, on an unrelated note, I've also written about Bill Barr recently in relation to the El Paso shooting. Some really creepy stuff going on there with Bill Barr. So be sure to check that out at mintpressnews.com. And hopefully part 4, the last part, what I really hope to be the last part of my Epstein series, will be out sometime this week. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, talk to you guys later. Bye, and thanks for watching.